Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Hey, we're coming here with another great podcast. And of course, we have the most wonderful guests, and we also have the most wonderful audience. So we certainly appreciate you guys tuning in. Sorry, but I've been off for a while. We did get pneumonia, so that's been fun after South by Southwest. So we're getting back into the gig of it. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube.com/Chris Voss. Hit that bell notification button so you get all the notifications of what we're doing. Be sure to go to Google Play. Let's see, what else is there? There's iTunes. The Chris Voss Show podcast is on iTunes. You can go there, subscribe to it, download it. Please refer it to your friends, neighbors, relatives, dogs, cats, pool boys, mistresses. Mistresses is always good, especially if you have 2 or 3 of them. Get them to subscribe to the show. Your wife will never know. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning into the show. We've got a incredible guest with us. Of course, we have all the best guests and the best audience. And this gentleman is Mark David Gibson. I actually should probably redo this. He is retired U.S. Air Force Captain Mark David Gibson. He certainly earned that thing, I'm sure, through blood, sweat, and tears in the military. We certainly have a high respect for these folks. He makes his debut as an author with his memoir, Served in Silence, The Struggle to Live Authentically. Basically, Mark takes you down a journey before, during, and after the military's don't ask, don't tell policy in his book. He will take you through his life story of shame and secrecy to presently living a fulfilling life with love and authenticity. And his book, Served in Silence, speaks to the heart of anyone who is struggling to live authentic. What is my deal with authenticity?
Coffee.
Authentic. Okay, all right. You know what? I'm just going to go full retard with that. And he aims to inspire readers to be brave and live their authentic truth. By the end of the show, I think I'm going to have authenticity down. How are you doing, Mark? Welcome to the show.
Doing great. Glad to be here. Thanks so much.
I evidently have appeared to have received some brain damage from the high fevers and my pneumonia. So my apologies for munching the word authenticity there. So welcome to the show, and let's talk about your book, bud.
Great, thanks.
Now, you served, I think, about 20 years in the military.
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah, I joined. I rushed high school, because I was getting bullied pretty bad, and so at 16, I took 2 years in one and graduated, and didn't really have a lot of options thereafter. So looked around, and I was like, well, that military thing might be a ticket out. So I joined the military at 17.
Wow. Now, a lot of this book is going to be about your journey, I think, in being gay, if I'm correct. And was there a discovery period that you went through where you weren't sure, whether you were gay or not, I guess?
Yeah, 17. So, I thought it was kind of odd, as a 17-year-old, that's a pretty big contract. That's a pretty serious contract to sign. And at the very end, there was a disclaimer that you had to initial, and it was the narrative of the military not accepting homosexuals. And I was just like, it's kind of weird. At 17, I'm like, why would they be talking about sex or sexuality or anything on a government form? So, but to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I like most young people, coming to terms with their sexuality, gay, straight, bi, whatever. I just didn't think it was an issue, and just didn't think it was professional to be asking such a question on such a document. So I just saluted smartly and drove on.
Yeah. Now, when you signed up, was the don't ask, don't tell policy in place yet, or did you join before that?
No, I joined before that. I joined in 1986, and the don't ask, don't tell policy was not formed into law until the Clinton administration in the late 90s.
So now your book is talking about being authentic and true to yourself, and Yeah, I imagine that probably includes being honest with yourself as to your sexuality and being open in the world at being, you know, proud of your sexuality and being just who you are as a human being. Really, is that my understanding correctly?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. You know, it was a very dehumanizing policy, a discriminatory policy. But you know, again, even after the policy was enacted, at no time in my military career did I think it was professional, respectful, or held with a high regard of integrity
Hmm.
to be talking about sex or anything related to sex in the uniform. I just held the uniform in such high esteem
Hmm.
that I just didn't think it was professional, and I still don't. I mean, in the workforce or in the boardroom
Yeah.
or whatever uniform we're wearing. And so that what it ended up doing is I pushed myself because of the don't ask, don't tell policy and my situation further and further and further into the shadows.
Hmm.
And then that exacerbated by addiction to alcohol.
Hmm.
And then later on, suffering crushing PTSD.
Yeah.
Everything pretty much came to the surface, and it was going to be it was pretty easy. You go left and you die, you go right and you kind of figure this out and try to be a happy human.
Yeah. And it's hard to be happy when you're not being authentic, as you say in your book. So you had to, that was, you kind of led into my next question. So when you were in the military, at least for the initial periods, or I don't know if you served in a kind of virtual closet with the military issues, all those 20 years, or was there a portion of that that you had that kind of hidden, and then maybe you came out maybe more during your service, or how did you go through that whole process of time?
Actually, no, I never did. And looking back, I don't have a lot of regrets in my life, but I just have to wonder. I was very successful. I was a
Mhm.
highly decorated officer, and I loved being in the military. I served with some great Americans,
Mhm.
and if anything, that's the biggest thing I miss is the camaraderie. But I really never brought my true self to the day. You just weren't allowed.
Mhm.
And actually, when I was deployed in Afghanistan, and when the book came to me and the title came to me, I was faced with being under attack and that constant fight flight mentality. And we had just been under attack at the base, and I was just reflecting and I thought, you know, Chris, I was there fighting in a country for people to have more rights than I did in my own country. And I decided to change my will. I did not want to be buried in the United States. I just had an issue with serving my country that didn't really serve me, so to speak. So it wasn't until 2010 that I felt like I was a real American patriot when President Obama repealed the don't ask, don't tell policy and allowed all military members to serve openly and proudly.
Yeah, it was really silly how we had to play that game for a while. That was like, I guess, a stepping stone to get there, um, where they had to do the don't ask, don't tell, and I think we talked for a while that prior that it almost wasn't a good thing in the beginning because it exposed people, and then they got some retaliation from it.
Yeah, they sure did. And I watched it happening. And it wasn't because of the don't ask, don't tell policy, the way that policies work. So that might not be what was the nail in the coffin.
Mhm.
However, conduct unbecoming, then that might have been the nail that was in the coffin, because then it
Wow.
would be associated with, well, I saw you at a gay bar, or I saw you participating in some type of LGBT function, and so we're not going to address that because that's the policy. However, that looks like it's conduct unbecoming, and
Wow.
we'll just kindly ask you to leave the military.
So it gave him a way to circumvent the policy then. by using
Oh
a
yeah,
method of
absolutely.
flushing out. And so it was basically open prejudice or prejudice that you never do. And I imagine that had to be hard because you know you're gay and you're keeping it hidden and you're seeing your friends expose it, and then they get slaughtered by being exposed, and you're just standing there. You can't defend your friend. You can't help them. You bring up an interesting point. The feeling as an officer that you're serving our country, but you can't get during up until recently you can't get married. You can't one of the things that really helped me turn my religious family, or at least my mom, on gay marriage was I started explaining to her and showing her how gay men that lived together as a married couple but couldn't get married legally would be denied rights like visitor rights in the hospital. They couldn't, since they weren't family or couldn't prove they were family, they couldn't be at the deathbed of a loved one that they maybe had lived with for 20 years. And so, some of the stories of the issues that go with not being in that legal stance and rights just heartbreaking. I can't imagine being able to be with someone that I loved, regardless of who that is, and not being able to be with it, comfort them on their deathbed because technically, legally, we're not family because of some married law, which I think is I think it's just a contract anyway when it comes down to it. I have enough divorced friends to know it's a business contract. So your big struggle was trying to, hold this back. You were dealing with PTSD. You were dealing with alcohol, and of course, alcohol. In the military, you guys party hard. My brother was a Marine, so he spent his weekends drinking and fighting at the bar. Pretty much, you probably know a lot of Marine jokes. So you had to bury that all for a long time, and that must have been quite the struggle.
Yeah, and what ends up happening, and other people that I have talked to is you begin to have this outer shell, and being a high functioning officer, military member, but the inside you're decaying. You're
Yeah.
absolutely dying on the inside, and sadly, the body or the mind is going to seek some type of relief or comfort. And
Mhm.
I found mine through alcohol, and other people find it through suicide, sadly.
Yeah.
And it's just a devastating. It was a dehumanizing policy. And I really hope, I mean, it doesn't look like it, but I hope that our nation has learned from the devastating effects of a policy such as that,
Mhm.
and that we don't go backwards in time, that we continue to go forward. And to your point about the Marriage Equality Act, that wasn't just as a signal for the LGBT community, but for our entire country. I
Mhm.
mean, we are, Americans, and why would we let a law or stand in the way of love? And it's got to be. I think that's actually cruel and unusual punishment. If your loved one is dying of stage 4 pancreatic cancer and you can't be there to hold the
Mhm.
hand as they pass, I think that's very cruel. And so you just take that and you just magnify that by every day. So as a person, every day I get up, brush teeth, clean, wash hair, blah, blah, blah. And then you put on a uniform. There's one filter. Now you put on another filter. You have to do the pronoun shift all day long. Then that's another filter. And then they get to talk about, everybody else talks about, I had a barbecue over the weekend. I very seldom revealed any type of personal activities because I didn't want to slip with a pronoun or whatever. I never lived in the same community that I was stationed,
Mhm.
to great peril at times, because I would live 2 hours away. Well, when you got to be
Yeah.
there at 4:30, or if you have to be there at 6, that's a long day, and then work a 12-hour day, and then
Wow.
jump in the car to go home. And then at home, I checked my uniform at the door, so to speak, because I didn't want those two lives to actually cross.
Yeah. And it really is a shame. We ask so much for our military folks. I mean, we ask them to put their life on the line and take a bullet for this country. And like you say, I mean, you guys stand against a lot of the evil shit in the world and protect us from it to secure freedoms for us that you guys don't always get to participate. And I think there is still a lot of discrimination towards it. You know, I'm not really happy about Donald Trump's recent thing where they want to kick LGBTQ people out of the military, but hopefully maybe some court cases, the ACLU can put a stop to that in court. But yeah, it's really interesting to me as a country as to how hard it has been for us to quit dragging ourselves with the I forget the guys who founded this country, the Pilgrims, with their real purist sort of religious ways, and you know, the Scarlet Letter, and you know, the issues that we have with religion and sexuality and the biases there are just amazing, and how they're still so ingrained in our society, and the prejudices there of what people have, and of course we're living now more where we're seeing in our world people that are dealing with where the prejudice has just come back in a storm with this political wind. And I think it's probably maybe even harder for more people to live with authenticity, especially LG or transsexual people right now, because they seem to be getting a lot of punishment. And it's kind of interesting. I'll meet people that are very supportive of LGBT, but then they're not into transsexuals or bathrooms and blah blah blah. And and it's a stupid joke in our society. I mean, why can't we all just love each other, get along, and just be nice to each other, whether it's skin or sexuality or the opposite sex? I mean, can't we all just get along?
Yeah, and you know, I use an example in my book for other people to. So I use the "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" policy as the example of that was a block for me to live authentically. But imagine that you get to walk out into public every day and you have blue eyes, and you can never admit the fact that you have blue eyes, and you know, just take that and magnify it and think about that and think about how that makes the other person feel. Or, you know, now there's a secret, this proposed secret, because now Chris knows I have blue eyes, but we can't talk about the fact I have blue eyes. So that makes me less than everybody else in the room. So it's just a downward spiral. And you know, the work that I did over the last couple of years in working in the LGBT business community is it's pretty amazing the amount of buying power and LGBT dollar power that is behind the LGBT business community. Yeah. And these are everyday business people that you work with on a day-to-day basis. And it isn't so much about the act of sexuality, it's the orientation. They just happen to be a part of the LGBT community. Yeah. But that doesn't mean, I mean, they do their job. They do great work for this country. Yeah, and I
mean, they're dying for our country in some things. In fact, one of the recent things I've been upset about is they've been deporting people that served in our military just because I guess you can serve in our military, but God forbid, you know, we should give you a citizen card. That's just the most messed up thing one of the messed up things. There seems to be a lot these days. But, you know, we're asking someone to take a bullet and die for this country. And you know, there's not a whole lot of people that like to sign up for the military these days. You know, I know they've struggled sometimes with recruitment and stuff. And so, you know, having a strong military, people like that. But, you know, if people want to serve this country, and certainly you guys are underpaid and overworked because, you know, you guys can pay an ultimate price for our freedom. And we can't afford people to respect and care and love that as just a fellow human being. You know, I'm hoping that we're on a trend as we go through these next few decades where this is going to, you know, we're going to start getting over some of these hangups and some of this Puritan hangups and stuff. I'm hoping so. I don't know how positive I am with religion now having the ability to form their own super PACs. That could be even weirder, but we'll see. I guess we're in a zag right now, according to Obama, President Obama. Hopefully we zig back from it in a couple more years. But yeah, it's got to be hard to be authentic, because you'd be trying to live as a normal person, pursuing your sexual interests, pursuing your life partner, pursuing someone that you live with. You know, you bring up an excellent point. In all of the companies I've done business with, when I've worked with people that are in the LGBT community, they have a great buying power. In fact, some of our favorite clients were guys that were married couples, but they were just living together, of course, because they couldn't marry legally. And they were what we call dinks, or, you know, I call heterosexual people dinks too. Basically, it's double income, no kids. So it's parents that don't have kids, and, you know, they got plenty of money to spend because they ain't got no kids. I've been called that a few times. Like, you're a dink. I'm like, well, I don't have a wife, so I'm keeping all the money. But you know, there is a lot of buying power. There is a lot of merch out there, and of course, you know, I'm not sure if anybody should tolerate or should be discriminatory in their mind, but they're willing to parlay it in exchange for dollars. And we should just learn to respect everybody as a human being. You know, regardless of color, sexuality, or whatever, you cut us open and we all bleed the same. We're all red on the inside, and we all the same parts and pieces. And you know, somehow as a country, we need to start, and as a world, we need to start looking at everybody's a human being, and let's just all try to respect each other and get along, whether it's a country or whether it's a sexuality or a color of skin. Jesus, it's just insane. So I imagine it was quite the struggle. I would have a hard time with it because I'm pretty authentic and I try and live my authenticity, whatever the hell that is. People tell me that I'm an asshole, I guess, is basically what people appreciate about me. But but yeah. So any good stories from your book that you want to tell us?
Yeah, you know, what I was just thinking about while you were talking about is when I was in the military, I assure you that the last thing I was considering when we were going off to do battle, and you know, you are the one that's covering my six, or you're the qualified person as a marksman. Oh wait, are you gay? Are you Methodist? Are you that? None of that kind of rolls through your mind as you're putting metal downrange to protect me, or vice versa. Yeah. So it is kind of silly. I think there was more backdraft over the one of the military units changing their headgear versus the repeal of the don't ask, don't tell policy, because it was just a non-starter. And I'm kind of glad for that. And I talked to younger people today that, you know, millennials, that they're really focused on like big issues, you know, like air pollution and, you know, big issues. They don't understand why that previous generation was so fixated on one's crotch. They don't get it.
Yeah, it's. I'm just hoping more and more that we can become a science society that's built on science. You know, one of my favorite songs is, of course, Imagine from John Lennon. I'm a big believer in that. I'm an atheist, but, you know, I understand why people find religion. I understand why people have to cling to something. I suppose in some way I'm clinging to something if I say I'm an atheist. Certainly, I don't think anyone knows what goes beyond the wall of us passing, and certainly no one seems to want to tell us, so we'll just have to ride with it. But you know, it's interesting to me, the choices people make and what they do. But one of the things I've had to really look at in our recent, you know, I have a lot of gay friends, and after the presidency got won in 2016, I'm not sure that I want to use, let's say, presidency in quotes, and a lot of my friends that were gay had their cars painted, windshields slammed in. He awoke in this hate and discrimination that I guess had been people had just been hiding. There was a lot of friends I ended up following on social media and unfriending because all of a sudden this wonderful person who was always like Obama's great and gay people are great and then suddenly, you know, this guy just gave them license to say all the stuff they've been repressing all these years. And I guess they, in some way, decided to live authentically, which is probably good because then I was finally like, oh, you, okay, good. Thanks for letting me know who you are. Unfriended.
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess there's something to, you know, certainly the KKK people and the white nationalists decided to live with authenticity. And they got a license to ride. So hopefully we will zig back from a lot of this stuff. I mean, I had friends that were, it was the racial attacks and the discrimination attacks were so bad. I had friends that were Arab and they were from, what was the place that we saved from Iraq years ago in the 90s with the first Iraq war? I want to say Yemen, and it's not Yemen. Kuwait. I had a Kuwaiti friend, and she's got a light darkness of skin, and somebody gave her they used the N-word with her and were cursing her out that they assumed she was black, and it was just ironic because like you're attacking her because you're racist because she's black, and turns out she's just Arab. You know, she's not even like you're even in the wrong discrimination era. It's just so stupid, but you know, par for the course when it comes down to it. But yeah, I'm hoping that we can get away from some of this stuff. Now, one thing we talked about in the pre-show was you have a great story about moving a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, that I just wrote a paper about the promise of an authentic life, personally and professionally. And my point of view is, at least for the business community, regardless of which community, just in business in general, I believe that the solutions to business problems could be hiding in unlikely employees.
Mm-hmm.
And I demonstrate that by an example of, if you're an employer, what type of environment have you set up that is a block to let employees be authentic? Mm-hmm. And that could be a challenge because if I'm blocking Chris, it doesn't seem like I can block you very much, though. You're pretty outspoken. If I'm blocking you to not bring your true self to the day and you're only bringing 50%, well, now you're only applying 50% to give me solutions to my business problems.
Yeah.
So why don't you tap into that untapped resource, being able to make it an authentic environment, whatever it is. It could be politics, it could be religion, or whatever the barriers are in the workplace. So I was talking to you earlier about an example that I thought about in the military, which was at the time it was pretty scary. Moving a nuclear weapon is a very serious event, if you can imagine.
I wouldn't want to be near one. I just feel like I don't want any part of that.
I worked in the facility that did the maintenance for the Peacekeeper nuclear missile, and wow. The Peacekeeper has 10 reentry warheads. So it's one missile that goes up, and then when it opens, there are 10 other reentry vehicles that are fixated on targets.
Wow.
So that's a very large missile.
Yeah.
And it had just snowed the night before. I was out in Wyoming. I was stationed in Wyoming, beautiful country. And it had just snowed a lot, as it usually would in the West. And then they're going to move this missile. It has to go from the maintenance facility back to its silo to go back home. Well, about an hour after it had left, the alarm started going off. We knew something was happening, didn't quite know what. And then there's a crisis. People assemble, and the military is very well trained by checklists. And so then it's brought to light that the missile has come to a full stop. You do not want a nuclear missile stopped ever. anywhere.
Wow.
So it comes to a full stop because of the snow and the packing down of the snow. And now the missile could not clear an overpass.
Oh, wow.
So,
It's so much it couldn't clear the overpass.
So, so there's a rank structure, obviously, in the military, and there's definitely protocols upon protocols on top of what you do in your daily life. And so they bring everybody together, and all of the brainstorming starts to working, and okay, let's deconstruct the bridge, and we'll bring in a helicopter, we'll lift the bridge off, and then we'll pass it, and then reconstruct the bridge, then we can turn the vehicle around. I mean, all these different things. And there's a lieutenant, low ranking, in the back of the room, and he's trying to inject a solution. And the general is watching all of this. And so he says, did you consider all of the options? And the colonels are all, yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got the best ideas. And so the general just said, he was great. He was a masterful teacher. And he said, well, I don't think we considered everything. So he called on the lieutenant, and he said, Lieutenant, do you have a solution or a recommendation? And kind of inappropriate as far as protocol goes, because you don't speak above your rank, especially when there's other rank in the room. And so he stands at attention, he says his name, and he looks down, and he mutters what the solution is. So the general tells him to speak up, and it's okay. He gave him permission to speak up. So everybody in the room is all a hush, because this lieutenant, he's fried. The general is going to eat his lunch. And so the lieutenant speaks up, and he says, hey, why don't we just let the air out of the tires?
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, just crawling under the bridge.
The general looks to the colonel and says, hey, let the air out of the tires, and then when it clears, reinflate the tires. And let's put this missile into safety.
Wow.
And so the reason why I mentioned it, and I talk about it in the paper that I wrote, is because think about what we do on a day-to-day basis. Someone like you and I in a room with pretty strong personalities, and we're going to just probably get in there, roll up our sleeves, and come up with all kinds of crazy solutions. But what about the person that might not be as strong of a personality, but they still have something to contribute, but they just couldn't get a word in edgewise because you and I are probably a little overbearing, and that person doesn't feel as comfortable. So it goes. You and I probably just had some crazy solutions because, we're going to head out and get the job done. But that person might have had a more profitable solution if we would just consider everybody. And it's nothing new. It just goes to everybody can contribute. Mm-hmm. But I take it one step further in my book and talk about not only can they contribute, but think about what capacity do they contribute in. If they're only bringing 50% of the day to the day, they're only giving you a 50% solution. So that was one example that I used. Is that one I don't think is in the book. That one's in this paper that I just wrote, the promise of an authentic life, professionally and personally. And then the same goes personally. If I have to check myself at the door, and I have all of these filters that I have to put on before I even get to dinner, then, what am I bringing to that relationship of not just my partner, but my wife or my children? And so I really encourage people to consider the ways that you're not being authentic. And in my book, I'm not using this was the reason or the cause of anything. I just simply want to use it as an example and let Served in Silence be a roadmap that will identify the hazards of not living authentically.
Most definitely. I mean, a lot of people don't really think about the environment of the business that they build when they build a business. To me, it was always super important. One of the things we always had was the only dumbest question is the unanswered question. And usually when an employee either didn't feel like like you said, they could contribute, they could open their mouth to go, hey, that's not going to work because of this. You're like, I have learned, in fact, I got reminded recently that a lot of introverts, and I when I usually get bitten by somebody, it's usually an introvert, because I'm so much of an extrovert, and either because I'm so much of a heavy rider of being me, they don't feel like they can contribute, whether it's me maybe stifling them by being a loudmouth, or maybe they're just stifling themselves because they're an introvert. But you get the play there where basically it ended up backfiring me, and then later I hear about, I don't know, how I hurt their feelings or stepped on them or something like that, and I'm like, if you just really talk to me, probably just resolve a lot of the shit. And that's what we all need to do. We need to start understanding each other, communicating. We all need to quit seeing our differences and seeing what makes us the same. Dan Rather wrote a really beautiful book that I need to read. And evidently it talks more about how, the things that make us great as Americans with each other, as opposed to what divides us. And so I think it's a real important thing. I have a lot of friends. I lived for a time in my life in Utah, and so I have a lot of people that are Mormon, and a lot of friends in Utah that are ex-Mormon. And one of the biggest challenges they have, you brought up earlier, is a high suicide rate among the LGBT community up in Utah, because the Mormon Church has such a horrible standard and attitude towards them. And it's just horrific, the suicide rates that are up there. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that go into drugs, and like you did with alcohol, to go into different ways to mask or deal with having to hide themselves and not be authentic.
Yeah, and the pain that's there, that requires, let's face it, if we're in pain, we go to the doctor and we go to surgery. Well, we don't do that without Novocaine. Imagine having to do that every day to arm up in pain to get some form of Novocaine, whatever it might be, overeating or drinking or drugs or whatever the case may be. Back to your point about the extrovert, and I had to learn this the hard way too, because I learned in the military it's a little bit different, because everybody kind of knows their position and how you contribute, and there's protocols. I use the military example of. Yeah, exactly. So, but, I had to learn it when I retired, and then I went on and I worked for as a consultant and forming different teams. Is an introvert, that makes them very uncomfortable. And it makes them to the point of, it makes them nervous, or especially, someone like you or I that is very much an extrovert or a lot of energy. But they have just as much, if not more, to contribute, because you and I are busy running our mouths and they're sitting back taking everything in. And then they're like, I've got the solution over here. So anyway, I agree with you. I really had to work hard on that, because I know that about myself, and I know that it's not appealing to everybody on the team at once.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer. Years ago, when I had my board, one of my CEOs I worked with years ago, told me, you always want to have at least one contrarian on your board. The guy he's always negative about everything. He's like, that won't work. That won't work. And everyone tends to try and hate that person. But the thing that I learned is to always have one around, because that one person can really save your ass sometimes. Sometimes they're just negative and they're just always wrong. But man, when they are right, they are dead on right, and they'll save you millions of dollars. And I've seen that happen before, where it's like, wow, okay, we need to listen to this guy maybe a little bit more. And I just, like I say, we need to come to a thing in the society where we need to quit all these different religious hangups and this Puritan thing that we inherited from from the Pilgrims, and we just need to get over ourselves. I mean, I'm a big thing at being what I call a citizen of the world. I am a proud American. I love this country. I think it's beautiful. I love our military folks that serve. But as a whole, to me, I am a citizen of the world, and really a citizen of humanity. And humanity is my flag. We're all humans. We all bleed the same. We all have the same inner parts, pretty much kind of the same DNA structure. When you come down to it, I mean, we're all humans. We just all need to learn to get along. And these deals. You know, I got fooled a lot by the Obama era, where I'm like, okay, well, we've beaten this discrimination stuff. There's still a little bit kicking around, but you know, we got this under control. We got a black president finally, and oh hell no, find out we still got a long ways to go. So and it's interesting, you know, Martin Luther King just they just celebrated. Well, it's not much of a celebration, I suppose is the wrong word, but they recognized his 50 years since he was assassinated recently. And it's you look at that and wow, 50 years since he gave the mountaintop speech and was killed. And you know, here we have rampant discrimination just going on like it's nothing else. And you know, we found out there's this sleeping giant of people who have decided to be authentic in their own way in the 1950s way, to taking us back there and dragging us back into that void again, which is just so anti-progress. It's not even funny.
Yeah, when I was writing my book, and I was experiencing a lot of what was going on in the country, and those of you that are authors that are listening, you know, you kind of go into airplane mode if you're working on your manuscript and kind of, you know, just get it done. And then you know, toggle the switch a little bit to come back up for air and see what's going on, but then you got to go back in. And sometimes it was kind of sad to see what was going on and watching what was going on. But that gave me a little bit more of encouragement to get my book done. And, you know, hopefully it will be used as that roadmap. And, you know, you talk about the devastation of suicide in the LGBT community and being so high. And I just have to hope, I really do hope, Chris, that maybe if this is a lifeline for showing the pathway to authentic living, then maybe that permanent solution to such temporary problems would not be the ultimate solution. So we're super excited. I have been deliberate and intentional to join forces with Lost and Found Youth. And Lost and Found Youth is a homeless shelter for LGBT kids that have been kicked out of their homes. And I think what a better way for me to help be an example to them. And, you know, I don't have to, they don't need my book. I can just go and hang out with them, and we can cook a pasta dinner and just talk about the struggle to live authentically and give them a glimmer of hope that it does get better. And I'm living proof it does get better, and I want to be that example. And so we're real excited about joining forces with them. And the portion of the proceeds of my book goes to that cause. And also my time. I will be volunteering time to, like I just said, I'm going to go sit, chat with them, talk with them. Their whole world has been turned upside down by their concept of love and trust. And if anything, at that time, for humanity's sake, just for humanity's sake, I think that we need to lock arms and just embrace them with as much love as we possibly can from a humankind perspective. And so, Served in Silence, I set up an autograph copy of the book on my website, and the proceeds of that program on my website will go to Lost and Found. We just had an incredible launch on last weekend, March 31st, from the Fox Theater in Atlanta. And we raised over $1,000 at that event for Lost and Found. And real excited. We came out strong, Chris, on Amazon, went straight to #1 for new releases. And so we're just super excited about everything that's going on.
That's awesome, man. And it, you know, that's a struggle that I said I saw in religious circles where, you know, your family kicks you out and they abandon you, and people you loved, and sometimes religions that you love abandon you because of your sexuality. And trying to live authentically isn't easy, because you find that, you know, a lot of people turn away from you, and some of your lifelines, people you love and people you thought that cared for you. And so it's great that you're supporting that charity and stuff. Give us your plugs on websites they can go to find all your stuff.
Sure. Thank you. You can always learn more information about me and the project at markdavidgibson.com. And markdavidgibson.com/book would take you right into place an order for an autographed signed book of the Served in Silence. I will sign it for you and mail it to wherever you'd like me to. And then the proceeds from that will also go to Served in Silence. This is kind of cool. My publisher helped me with this. So you can always just go to markonamazon.com and that will take you right into my landing page on Amazon.
Sounds good, man. So everyone check out his book. I think it's going to be pretty awesome. Let's all learn to be a whole lot nicer to each other. I mean, there's even so much high rhetoric in the last year of hate against people that are the others, if you will, whether it's color or nationality. I mean, we're calling certain countries crap holes these days, which is just completely inappropriate. So let's all just try to get along and love each other, because we're all in a big boat together in this universe, and there really isn't any other place to go, and we're not doing a lot of good stuff to this one. So, well, we all just ought to learn to get along, because certainly nuclear destruction and some of the things that are going on right now and that are talked about is not going to end well for anybody. And we certainly would like to see the future. So thanks for coming on the show, Mark. We certainly appreciate it and your service. Thanks for being a military officer for our country. I have a high regard for anybody who serves this country. Well, I don't like General Flint, but, you know, I probably respect the years he was a good soldier before he turned bad, General Flint. But thank you very much for coming on the show. Everyone check out servedinsilence.com. And we'll be sure to check you guys out next time. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, hit that bell notification button. Go to iTunes, Google Play, tell your friends, neighbors, relatives to take and subscribe to the show. We certainly appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for coming on the show, Mark.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Take care.
All right, bud. Thank you.